Have you ever felt like you were placed in a situation for a reason? Like you were born for a moment much bigger than yourself? In today's episode, we explore the remarkable story of Queen Esther, a woman who rose from obscurity to royalty and then risked her life to save her people. Esther's story is one of divine placement, extraordinary courage, and the power of standing firm when the stakes are high. She teaches us that even in silence, God is at work, and that bold faith can change the course of history. So sit back, open your heart, and let's discover the boldness of Esther, how one woman saved a nation. Esther's story begins not in a palace, but in the shadows. She was a Jewish girl living in exile in the Persian Empire. Her Hebrew name was Hadassah, which means myrtle tree, a symbol of peace and righteousness. But after losing her parents, she was raised by her older cousin Mordecai, who loved her like a daughter. At that time, the Jews were a minority in Persia, vulnerable, quiet, and dispersed. They were tolerated but not celebrated. Life in exile meant living with constant awareness of your outsider status. But God had a plan. When King Xerxes, also called Ahasuerus, deposed his queen, Vashti, for refusing to obey his command, he launched a kingdom-wide search for a new queen. It wasn't a romantic fairy tale. Women were taken into the king's harem, evaluated and selected, not based on virtue but appearance and favor. Esther, chosen among many, found favor in the eyes of everyone, including the king. Though she was Jewish, Mordecai instructed her to keep her identity secret, and so Esther entered the palace as queen, hiding her roots, unaware that God was preparing her for a greater purpose. While Esther quietly held her place as queen, trouble was brewing in the palace. A man named Haman, ambitious, prideful, and power-hungry, rose to become the king's right-hand man. Haman demanded honor and reverence, and everyone bowed, except Mordecai. Mordecai's refusal infuriated Haman, and when he discovered Mordecai was a Jew, his anger grew into hatred, not just for one man, but for an entire people. With cunning words and manipulation, Haman convinced the king to sign a deadly decree. Let all Jews be destroyed, young and old, children and women, on a single day. The date was set, the decree was sealed, and the city of Susa was thrown into confusion. For the Jewish people, this was a death sentence. When Mordecai heard the news, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and wept at the city gate. Then he sent a desperate message to Esther, begging her to go to the king and plead for their lives. But Esther was afraid. No one, not even the queen, could approach the king uninvited. The law was clear. Do so, and you die, unless the king extends his golden scepter. And it had been 30 days since the king had called for her. Her silence could protect her. But Mordecai's reply shook her. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone will escape. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Esther 4, verse 14. Esther faced a life-altering decision. She could stay silent, or she could risk everything. But before taking action, Esther did something powerful. She called for a fast, 3 days with no food or drink, not just for herself, but for all the Jews in Susa. She knew she needed God's strength. After those 3 days, she rose, fully aware of the danger ahead, and declared, "If I perish, I perish." She dressed in royal garments, walked toward the throne room, and waited. In that moment of silence, history stood still. Then, the king held out the golden scepter. Her life was spared, but Esther didn't confront Haman right away. Instead, she used wisdom and patience. She invited the king and Haman to a private banquet, and then another. It was at the second banquet that Esther revealed her identity. I am a Jew, and someone has plotted to destroy my people. The king was stunned. Who would dare do such a thing? And Esther pointed to Haman. The enemy is this vile Haman. The king's wrath exploded. Haman was arrested, and the very gallows he had built for Mordecai became his end. Haman's plot was exposed, but the decree to destroy the Jews couldn't be undone. It was law. So the king issued a new decree. The Jews could defend themselves. And when the day came, they did, and they prevailed. Esther had saved her people. The Jews celebrated their victory with joy, gifts, and feasting. And to this day, they remember it with the holiday called Purim, a celebration of deliverance, boldness, and divine reversal. Mordecai was honored, and Esther's courage was immortalized in Scripture. Esther didn't start as a hero. She was afraid, unsure, and silent. But God had placed her exactly where she needed to be, not for her comfort, but for her calling. And when the time came, she rose. Her story reminds us that God is always working behind the scenes, even when his name is not mentioned. In fact, the book of Esther never mentions God by name, and yet his fingerprints are on every page. You might be in a position today that feels insignificant. You might be afraid to speak up, to take a step, to do what's right. But remember this, you were born for such a time as this. God has placed you exactly where you are, for a reason. Your obedience, your courage, your voice, it matters. If Esther's story inspired you, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and don't forget to subscribe. Tell us in the comments, what part of Esther's journey spoke to your heart the most? This is Insight from Above, where we explore the wisdom of Scripture and how it still shapes our lives today. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of truth and inspiration.